Hi there. Well, we have a very common situation here where blue is holding the cube because red's way ahead in the race, and he doubled. And now he's got to bring his checkers home, and red has a 5-3 to play. Obviously, there are three plays that make sense. One is to volunteer the shot and come down with the 5 and the 3. Maybe it's time to volunteer. That saying, never volunteer, I can promise you that saying is not true. Never is certainly too strong. Secondly, you can just bring this checker in, play the 3 inside, and and try to hold this position. You can play totally inside, give yourself more spares, and play strictly for the race and crack your board a little bit more. So what play do you think is right and why? Well, let's start with whether or not you volunteer or not. The answer is no. Because if you volunteer now and you get hit, you lose. And you might not have to volunteer a shot ever. You could roll doubles, but maybe you volunteer a shot later and you're not in much worse shape later than you would be right now if you volunteer. But you've got some time here where you can play and you have no compelling reason to volunteer now. So the answer is don't volunteer, and whether you play any other play is not that bad. However, it is better to leave your spare. If you're not going to volunteer, you're just going to try and win this game. Play it all on the inside is the answer. Let's take a look what our friend says. Now, to fully understand, again, why you didn't bring this checker in is because now, next time, what happens if you roll a 6-1? But not only that, you don't care about leaving blots in your inner board. You don't care about breaking your board because your goal isn't to hit him. He's not going to leave you a shot unless he wants to anyway. It's not going to. There's no role that forces him to leave you a shot. He could leave you a shot with 6-1 now that you've left blots in your board, but that's the only way he really gains there, and you really didn't want to hit him that much anyway. You want to just bring your checkers home. So the answer, the real question is, why volunteer now? Well, the best way to understand why you don't volunteer now is to try and figure out when you might volunteer. How can you change this position to where you would volunteer? Well, I can see one way. Now, if I volunteer, unless he hits and covers, I have a much stronger game. Now, I have a reason to volunteer now. I have a reason to give the shot now. The reason is that if I wait, his board's going to be better than it is now. He's going to make this point. I've got a real reason to volunteer now. And as a result, it's right to volunteer. There's another thing that might make me want to volunteer, and that's timing. Let's say he's got the original position. This is it, where he was wrong to volunteer. What if you didn't have that much timing to wait? What if it looked like that you were probably going to have to leave a shot or more shots later anyway? Then it would be clearly right to volunteer. Let me give you a good example of that. Okay, if you play 5-3 safely here, you're probably going to be leaving a single or double shot later. Even if you brought the two checkers in from here, you're at risk with a 6-1 immediately. You have all kinds of risks going forward. Now's a very good time to volunteer because it could easily get worse for you. You might be leaving double shots later. So, never volunteer. I've just shown you a couple examples where you do. You volunteer if the timing is such to where you're more likely to leave as many or more shots later, and you volunteer when his board's likely to improve, or if he's got some weakness in his board and there's a very good reason to volunteer. This is not brain surgery. I made these shifts without rolling them out ahead of time, and it's pretty easy. They become thematical for me. It's not that I have every one of these positions memorized as a reference position, but I have this type of position as a theme for when do I volunteer and when do I not volunteer. Of course, the race is also going to be a factor. If I'm losing the race, if we put this position to where red has more checkers back and he wants to hold his position, you probably wouldn't be even forced to think about whether or not to volunteer or not, and you'd stay back. But again, by playing with the same kind of position and moving the checkers around, changing the roll. That's another thing you can do, is change the roll to see how that affects it. Change his board, change the score. You become involved in themes of plays, in types of plays for the certain types of positions, and you won't remember every play, you won't remember every position, but the theme will become clear to you, and then you too will be making thematic plays, plays that are along the theme of this position. The volunteer or not theme is what makes sense here, how to bring your checkers home or not. Hope this was helpful to you. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your support of the USBGF. Bye-bye.